Want a large SUV that can walk the walk as well as talking the talk? What about one you probably aren't familiar with, SsangYong's Rexton? If you're secure enough in yourself not to care too much about badge equity and want a large, capable, well-equipped 7-seat 4x4 for sensible money, it makes a lot of sense.
Increasingly, large luxury SUVs are all about image, all about badge equity, all about fashion, or at least some of them are. Here's one that's more practically grounded, the much improved 2.2-litre diesel version of SsangYong's Rexton. Of all this South Korean brand's products, the Rexton is probably the one provoking most familiarity amongst UK buyers. And that's because it's been around so long, since 2001 in fact. Sold in first generation form until 2006, when a second generation version offered much the same kind of solid, practical proposition. And much the same aging 2.7-litre Mercedes diesel engine. A big step forward, though, was made in 2013 with the launch of the Rexton W, the end letter a designation for this revised model's worldwide remit. That sales challenge was much aided by the installation of a properly modern 2-litre EXDI diesel engine that was fully Euro 5 compliant. It was a package that reawakened customer interest in this car and created a sales momentum that SsangYong hopes will continue with the improved version we're going to look at here. This car's merely badged Rexton and gets a cleaner, more powerful Euro 6 compatible 2.2-litre EXDI 220 diesel, which can be optionally paired to a smoother 7-speed Mercedes-sourced e-tronic automatic gearbox. At the same time, the brand has updated the car's interior, smartened the looks and added extra equipment, all part of a package of changes that have brought us a more modern, up-to-date product. Of course, its core values haven't changed. This car will still tow better than most of its competitors. It's still better suited than many of them to really rough off-roading. And it's still built to outlast you. If SsangYong has succeeded in sugaring these practical virtues with an efficient bit of modern tinsel, then it could have a very appealing product indeed on its hands for the right kind of buyer. Let's try it. Modern SUVs are usually marketed as being very car-like. This one isn't. Climb up into the commanding driving position, and rather refreshingly, it feels like exactly what it is. A tough, solidly built, go-anywhere 4x4 that isn't frightened of a bit of hard work. Earlier first and second generation Rexton models were always like that, but this third generation design has also added a layer of sophistication to its driving manners that was missing before. That's aided by the engine fitted beneath the bonnet, the main change to this improved Mark III version that we're testing here. In place of the 155 PS 2-litre EXDI Euro 5 diesel this car was originally launched with, there's now a 178 PS 2.2-litre EXDI 220 Euro 6 diesel power plant. And to be frank, the Rexton really needed this. All the more expensive cars it directly competes with, 7-seat SUVs like Toyota's Land Cruiser, Kia's Sorento and Hyundai's Santa Fe all offer at least 20% more power than this car could originally provide. SsangYong realised that if this Rexton could get on terms with its rivals in this regard, improve its efficiency figures and continue to substantially undercut them on price, then its buying proposition would be substantially enhanced. And that's exactly what's happened. True, other contenders in this class can still offer a little more power, but where it matters, this Rexton can now hold its own against them, thanks to its usefully bolstered 400 Nm torque figure. That's an 11% improvement on before, and it helps that the grunt is delivered low down in the rev range, just where you need it, from as little as 1500 RPM. It's certainly perfectly adequate to shift the substantial 2.1-ton curb weight, and is the main reason why the car can offer such a hefty 3-ton towing capacity. True, that is a touch less than a Discovery or a Shogun, but then those cars are much pricier than this one. More relevant is the fact that a closer rival like Kia's Sorento or Hyundai Santa Fe will only haul 2,000 kilograms when equipped with the automatic gearbox that most towers want. It all means that this SsangYong will make light work of hauling large caravans, horse boxes, boats or work trailers. It's not precious about getting up to its axles in mud either. You'd hesitate to take most luxury SUVs seriously off-road, and even if you did, you'd constantly be worrying about damaging the thing. There's none of that here. The tougher the terrain, the better this Rexton likes it, thanks to its solid ladder-framed chassis and heavy-duty low-ratio four-wheel drive setup that splits the torque equally between the front and the rear axles to provide all-round traction and to ensure optimum grip even in the most challenging circumstances. Steeply undulating terrain is no problem either, thanks to 216 millimeters of ground clearance, an approach angle of 28 degrees, a 25.5 degree departure angle, and a ramp breakover angle of 22.5 degrees. So, it walks the walk when it comes to hard work, but can it also talk the talk on tarmac, where after all, you're going to be spending most of your time? Well, SsangYong has done its best to improve things here, and in this enhanced model added in the option of the much smoother Mercedes-sourced 7-speed e-tronic automatic gearbox that's been fitted to this test car. Don't assume from that, though, that this South Korean brand has tried to turn this Rexton into some kind of cut-price BMW X5 or Audi Q7 rival. It hasn't, nor does it wish to. Those luxury SUVs have passenger car-like monocoque chassis and air suspension setups that would compromise this one in extremis. No, the point that we're trying to make is this, that SsangYong has narrowed the gap to big SUVs of the modern era whilst retaining the kind of go-anywhere practicality that most of them can only dream of, and doing so at a fraction of the price. Yes, there is a price to pay for that. If you picture Rexton into a corner, you'll notice the rather over-assisted steering, and yes, there will be plenty of lean and understeer. Not significantly more, though, than you'd expect to get in, say, a Mitsubishi Shogun or even a pricey Land Rover Discovery. Ultimately, it just comes down to what you want. And if that happens to be a tough and durable workhorse, then you probably won't be looking at throwing a car of this kind around anyway. In which case, you'll probably find the ride and handling balance an acceptable trade-off for the extra capability on offer. If you are going to be spending most of your time attacking the school run rather than the Rubicon Trail, then you'll probably want to avoid the entry-level SE variant, since that does without the multi-link rear suspension that does so much to improve the ride of models like this one that are further up the range. As long as you do that and don't go rushing around too many secondary roads, then we'll think you'll find this Rexton a quite acceptable tool for day-to-day tarmac travel. Certainly more so than you'd expect a hefty 4.7 metre long, 1.9 metre wide SUV to be. The decently sized 11.7 metre turning circle helps here, as does a glassy cabin that makes adjusting to this car from something smaller reasonably easy. SsangYong says it's designed this Rexton around the principle of practical elegance. Well, have they achieved that? Well, if you fit into the target demographic, you might well think so. You don't get the sophisticated avant-garde looks that you'd find with a premium badged German rival, but then that is not the kind of SUV that this car is trying to be. Instead, the shape speaks of tough but very nicely finished 7-seat sensibility, and manages to do so using design language smarter than you might expect from a budget brand. So far, so good. Get up close and personal here at the front, and the detailing is quite nice too. Minor aesthetic tweaks aimed at creating a more contemporary look include a subtle restyle for the chrome grille, brighter projector headlamps and trendy LED positioning lights. In profile, you get more of a perspective on the 4.7 metre length that makes possible this car's proper 7-seat capability. The chunky flanks are emphasised by a pronounced mid-level crease connecting wide wheel arches that on this top model house smart 18-inch diamond-cut alloys. There are standard roof rails, while most models get these useful side steps too. And at the rear, well, as before, the chunky rear lights, the wraparound glasswork and the neat roof spoiler remain. Underneath it all, though, is the thing that counts, the kind of tough ladder-framed chassis that all big SUVs used to have before they became all city slick, bling and ineffectual off-road. Yes, it does set this car back behind car-like monocoque-based rivals on tarmac, but for heavy-duty use, there's not much to beat it. Time to take a seat behind the wheel. Now, a proper off-roader should have a properly commanding driving position, and this one does. This is certainly old-school SUV motoring, but then in some ways that is rather refreshing. SsangYong isn't going for the last word in design elegance here, although having said that, efforts have been made to smarten up the cabin, notably with updated instrumentation and this smarter 4-spoke multifunction leather-trimmed steering wheel, which comes complete with audio, telephone and cruise control buttons. You also get this aluminium look finish applied liberally across the centre console, which features LCD readouts that can be hard to read in direct sunlight. There are a few soft touch materials too, although not enough to detract from the built-to-last feel. And storage for the paraphernalia of everyday life? Well, it's true that the door pockets and the glove box could be a bit bigger, but overall there's plenty of room for your odds and ends, and even a special overhead compartment for your sunglasses. And in the second row, well, for the kind of money SsangYong's asking, you might expect the kind of slightly cramped family packaging you'd find in, say, a Qashqai-sized family crossover model. Instead, what you get is a car that, thanks to a wheelbase some 30mm longer than a Toyota Land Cruiser, costing nearly twice as much, offers decent space for 2 or 3 folk. The seats don't slide, but they do recline. And a nice touch that some rival products overlook is the provision of reading lights here that'll be welcome on longer motorway trips. That long wheelbase means there's room for third row seating too. Now, you don't get this on the top spec ELX model we're trying here, even as an option. The premium leather fitted to this variant would be expensive to add to these extra chairs, and that's a needless expense for the 50% of Rexton buyers who choose to delete boot-mounted seating in favour of having a larger cargo area. Where 6th and 7th chairs are fitted, they're really only meant for children, thanks to the tiny footwell you get. And that's due to the high floor necessitated by those 4-wheel drive underpinnings. And boot space? Well, if you go for a 7-seat version and have all the chairs upright, you get up to 248 litres of space if you load it up to the ceiling, which isn't bad. This 5-seat model gives you the kind of capacity that all Rexton owners will be more likely to be using on a regular basis, about 475 litres. Fold the second seating row and a very reasonable 1,338 litres of space is opened up, and that's about 35% more room than you get with a rival Toyota Land Cruiser. The Rexton lineup sees an entry-level SE derivative at around £23,000, but that variant lacks the more supple multi-link rear suspension and automatic gearbox option that we think many buyers will want. For these things, you'll need to find another £2,500 and stretch your budget to just over £25,000 in order to get the leather-lined mid-range EX version that we'd choose. At this level, you've the option to pay SsangYong a further £1,500 if you want the Mercedes-sourced 7-speed e-tronic automatic gearbox that we're trying here. Both SE and EX models come with 7 seats as standard, although you can delete those extra chairs as a no-cost option if you want additional boot space. Around 50% of Rexton buyers do. If you opt to pay around £29,000 for this top ELX variant, then you're restricted to a 5-seat format. All models come with the same 178 PS 2.2 litre diesel engine. On to the value perspective. Well, yes, SsangYong is charging more for this Rexton than it used to, but it's still offering this model at prices that'll see you getting an awful lot of SUV for your money. For the cash this Korean brand is asking, you would struggle to get even a feebly capable 4x4 Qashqai-sized family crossover model. And that class of car wouldn't give you 7 seats, proper off-roading capability, or decent towing capacity. So, what else can you currently buy that will potentially seat more than 5 people and can capably tackle almost anything off the beaten track? A Kia Sorento, a Mitsubishi Outlander, Nissan X-Trail or a Hyundai Santa Fe? Well, these are the kinds of cars the magazines tend to compare the Rexton to, but you don't get a proper low-range gearbox on any of those models, nor can they tow as much. And anyway, they're priced in the £26,000 to £30,000 bracket in their most basic forms. And you'd have to pay a lot more than that if you want a variant with equipment levels to match those that you find in this SsangYong. For us, a long wheelbase Mitsubishi Shogun would probably provide a closer match to the tough size and practicality that's on offer here. But that will cost you around £30,000. And again, much more if you want Rexton levels of equipment. Otherwise, for a product properly capable of taking on this SsangYong, you'll need the kind of £38,000 to £45,000 budget that would be required for a new Toyota Land Cruiser 2.8 D4D or Land Rover Discovery. Now, I say new because SsangYong actually thinks this car's closest competition will come from used examples of both these models, which will have led tough lives and won't come with a kind of all-inclusive lengthy warranty that you get here. So, yes, you can see this Rexton's appeal. Now, if you're tempted by the SsangYong's proposition, then a glance at the standard spec might well tempt you towards a test drive. Even the entry-level SE model gets alloy wheels, roof rails, front fog lights, an alarm immobiliser, power heated mirrors, a heated lower front windscreen and a headlight levelling system. Inside there's 7 seats, automatic air conditioning, cruise control, remote keyless entry, an auto-dimming rear view mirror and a leather-covered steering wheel from which you can control a decent quality 6-speaker CD stereo with iPod and Bluetooth phone connectivity. Now, pay a little more and you can update the audio offering to the clever but rather complicated Kenwood infotainment system with navigation, a DAB radio and DVD capability. Go for the plusher EX variant and you get leather facings on all 7 seats with power adjustment for the driver, larger diamond cut 18-inch alloy wheels, side steps, rear parking sensors and solar controlled privacy glass. At the top of the range, this 5-seat ELX derivative includes the automatic gearbox as standard equipment and further adds heated seats front and rear that are finished in higher quality 2-tone leather, front parking sensors and an electric sunroof. Plus, as standard, you get the Kenwood infotainment and navigation system that I just mentioned. And options? Well, it is a little surprising to have to pay extra for metallic paint, but otherwise, apart from the in-car entertainment upgrade I mentioned, and of course the option of a tow bar, there really isn't too much else to spend your money on. Safety-wise, though this car hasn't been tested by Euro NCAP and doesn't feature curtain airbags, most of the other safety features that you expect to find are in evidence. So there are dual front and side airbags, while Isofix child seat mounts are fitted onto the outer seats in the second row. Now, to hopefully ensure that you never have to use them, there are ABS brakes, ESP stability control with ARP, active rollover protection, and for easing down steep slopes, HDC, hill descent control. There's also tyre pressure monitoring and speed sensing door locks. SsangYong has done a reasonable job in bringing the running cost returns of this Rexton up to date, courtesy of this improved model's now Euro 6 compatible 2.2 litre EXDI 220 diesel engine. Compared to the old 2-litre unit used before, combined cycle fuel economy has improved from 38.2 to 40.4 miles per gallon, which will mean an operating range of nearly 600 miles from the decently sized 80-litre fuel tank. CO2 emissions are enhanced too, from 196 grams per kilometre to a more acceptable 184 grams per kilometre if you choose the manual model. Go for an automatic variant like I'm trying here and these figures fall, but only slightly, to 38.1 miles per gallon and 194 grams per kilometre. The magazines will tell you that these returns still aren't up to the levels of rival 7-seat SUVs like Kia's Sorento and Hyundai Santa Fe. Well, no, of course they're not. Those two models aren't as tough or capable, nor do they have a proper, but inevitably heavy, low-range 4x4 transmission. So we need to be comparing apples with apples and pitching this car against proper tough SUVs that, well as seating 7, can easily tow heavy loads and, if necessary, take you through the Serengeti rather than simply through the odd muddy car park. Once you do that, this Rexton actually stacks up pretty well. It's now cheaper to run than a Mitsubishi Shogun, a Toyota Land Cruiser or a Land Rover Discovery, which will not only help you at the pumps, but also potentially improve your tax liability. Residual value should be good too. Used Rextons are in high demand across SsangYong's dealer network, and insurance is rated at Group 35D. Perhaps the best bit though is the peace of mind that comes as standard with this car, thanks to SsangYong's impressively complete, class-leading 5-year limitless mileage warranty. Limitless meaning the lack of the kind of irritating maximum mileage condition that many other brands impose in their small print. As you'd expect, the SsangYong cover deals with all the major mechanical components, including wheel bearings, suspension joints and bushes, steering joints, shock absorbers, and even the audio system. Wearable components such as clutch discs and brake friction materials that could have their life reduced by poor driving are covered for 1 year or 12,000 miles, while the battery and paintwork are covered for 3 years. Let's get down to the facts here. There is no other properly capable large SUV in the same price bracket as this one. If you want something really comparable with up to 7 seats that can tow as much or go as far off the beaten track, then you need to pay around 30% more for a Mitsubishi Shogun, or potentially need twice as much for a Land Rover Discovery or a Toyota Land Cruiser. Now, this basic point appears to have been ignored by most reviewers, who seem to insist on comparing this SsangYong to rivals not capable of even thinking about tackling the tough tasks that this Rexton can take in its stride. We've driven it everywhere, from the Surrey Hills to the mountains of the South Island in New Zealand, and found it up to everything we've been able to throw at it. Yes, of course, the proper, tough, ladder-framed underpinnings necessary to achieve this mean that this car won't tackle the tarmac twisties like a BMW X5, but then no SUV that's this big and practical can do that. Approach driving a Rexton remembering this, with expectations based around the things this car has been designed to do, and you're likely to be very satisfied with what it delivers. And what it delivers is sheer family-sized mud plugging capability for the kind of money that otherwise would buy you nothing more than, well, what? Something like a diesel automatic Volkswagen Golf. But of course, that's not the kind of comparison that most potential buyers will have in mind. Having been sensible enough to seek out and consider this car in the first place, they'll be looking at it as an alternative to a used Discovery or Land Cruiser. Now, SsangYong says it actively encourages potential Rexton customers to do that, confidently expecting the car's more refined and efficient EXDI 220 engine and the impressive limitless warranty that supports it to swing things in their favour. It's a no-nonsense approach, but in the pretentious age we live in, also in many ways, rather a refreshing one. Old school virtues then from Korea's oldest and most experienced brand. Just the way loyal SsangYong buyers like it.